It started with a pie. Mrs. Darlene McCoy, a retired schoolteacher from 2 houses down, stepped onto the front porch of the Walker home at exactly 7:42 p.m. She held a hot pecan pie in her hands, wrapped in foil, fresh from the oven. The smell followed her like a ribbon of warmth through the cold fall air. She liked Sarah Walker. Sweet lady. Always polite. Always smiled when she waved. Darlene had seen them just that morning, Tom, Sarah, their 2 kids laughing while carrying groceries inside. Normal, happy American family. She rang the bell. No answer. She knocked. Again. Still nothing. Then she saw it through the large bay window. The dining table perfectly set. 4 chairs slightly pushed out. Plates full. Mashed potatoes. Roast chicken. Green beans. A steaming bowl of mac and cheese. The steam was still curling up from the food. Glasses half full. 1 fork on the floor. A napkin balled up near Sarah's plate. Darlene leaned forward, squinting. Tom, she called through the glass. Silence. Something didn't feel right. The air was too still. The porch light flickered once. The pie in her hands suddenly felt too heavy. She reached for her phone and called 911. 2 squad cars arrived. Lights flashing red and blue against the quiet houses and neatly trimmed lawns of Harvest Grove Lane. This was the kind of neighborhood where dogs barked at squirrels, and the biggest crime last year was a stolen lawn gnome. Officer Mark Delgado and Officer Cassie Brooks walked the perimeter. All doors locked. Windows shut. No signs of forced entry. They called out. Walked around back. The family's golden retriever, Scout, barked wildly from behind the locked fence. He was thin, trembling, and looked like he hadn't eaten all day. His bowl was dry. Something's off, Cassie muttered. Yeah, Delgado replied. Reel off. They decided to breach the front door. It took 2 strong hits. Wood cracked. Lock gave way. The door creaked open. Warmth hit their faces. Not just from the heater, but from the food still sitting on the table. 4 plates. 4 forks. 4 full glasses of iced tea. The roast chicken was carved, meat still moist. The butter hadn't melted all the way into the potatoes. Steam still lingered above the bowls. It looked like the family had stood up mid-bite and just disappeared. Delgado held up a hand. You smell that? Cassie nodded. Yeah. Cinnamon. Someone baked today. He pointed at the counter, apple crumble still in the oven. Timer blinking done. They cleared the first floor. Living room, neat. Couch pillows fluffed. TV off. No signs of struggle. Kitchen, clean except for a single broken plate on the floor near the sink. Looked like it slipped. Nothing violent. No blood. Upstairs, bed's made. Emily's room full of books, drawings, and teenage clutter. Jake's room a shrine to baseball cards and Star Wars posters. The parents' room was still warm. A candle burned on the nightstand. Soft music played from a small Bluetooth speaker. Something instrumental. A piano melody that made Cassie's skin crawl. Still no one. They hesitated before going down. Delgado flipped the switch. Lights flickered, then came on. Laundry machine idle. An old weight bench. Cans of paint. Boxes labeled Zmaz and Dad's tools. Cobwebs. Nothing out of place. Cassie opened a side closet. Empty except for a pair of old boots and a dusty duffel bag. No sign of the family. No blood. No torn clothes. No screams. Just absence. A quiet that felt loud. They returned upstairs. Cassie checked the table again, this time slower. That's when she noticed something strange, a folded paper under Tom Walker's plate. Almost like it had been tucked there deliberately. Almost like someone wanted it found. She used tweezers to slide it out and unfolded it carefully. One line. Written in black ink, shaky but legible. They don't belong here anymore. No name. No date. No fingerprints. She looked at Delgado. His face had gone pale. He whispered, where the hell did they go? They called Darlene back to the porch to ask questions. She stood there, pie still in hand, lips trembling. I saw them this morning. They were fine. They looked happy. Did you notice anything unusual recently? Cassie asked. She hesitated. Well, 2 nights ago, I heard music. Late. Around midnight. Piano music. Soft. Real eerie. Thought maybe Emily was practicing. But then I saw someone. Standing at their window. A tall man. Just standing there. Not moving. Watching me. Delgado leaned forward. Could you see his face? She shook her head. Too dark. But he didn't blink. Just stared. Her voice cracked. Where are they, officers? Where did they go? Cassie didn't answer. Because she had no idea. As officers wrapped up, Cassie stood one last time at the dinner table. She stared at the mashed potatoes on Sarah's plate, the spoon still resting gently in them. She didn't know why she reached out, but she did. She touched the side of the bowl. Still warm. Still waiting. For lives. Gone in a blink. No signs. No struggle. Just warm food and silence. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't the blood or the screams, it's what's missing. If you felt the chill crawl up your spine tonight, hit that like button and subscribe for more true inspired tales like this one. Because what happened in the Walker house could happen anywhere. Even to you. Harvest Grove Lane wasn't the kind of place where things happened twice. But 2 days after the Walker family vanished, something else happened, something colder. It started with a picture. Detective Elise Harmon leaned over the kitchen table of the Walker home. She had just flown in from Seattle that morning, a favor from the FBI. She'd worked disappearances for 20 years, and something about this one felt wrong. Not just weird, wrong. For people, she murmured, scanning the scene again. No break-in. No exit. No bodies. She looked up at Officer Delgado. And you said the food was still warm when you arrived? Yeah, he replied. Still steaming. Like they left in the middle of chewing. Elise didn't respond. She pulled on gloves and walked toward the hallway. The entire house was tidy, too tidy. It didn't look lived in anymore. It looked staged. Then she saw it. A small hallway near the pantry lined with family photos. In every one, Christmas, birthdays, graduation shots, there was something off. The people were all smiling, Tom, Sarah, Emily, and little Jake. But they all had one thing in common. A single figure in the background, barely noticeable, always blurred, always distant. A tall, pale man in dark clothes. Every single photo. Elise froze. She pulled the nearest frame from the wall, Jake's birthday at the bowling alley. There he was, behind the glass, tall man, hands at his sides, eyes just shadows under the brim of a dark hat. She pulled another. Emily's piano recital. Far in the back row, nearly hidden by the curtain, him again. You see this? She asked Delgado, holding it out. He leaned in. Son of a bitch. You didn't notice this before? We didn't think to look at the photos. We were focused on the rooms, the yard, the basement. She laid the pictures out across the kitchen island. All of them, at least 12, contained the same haunting figure. And in every photo, the man was getting closer. Later that evening, Elise stayed behind to walk the house one more time. The sun was nearly down. Orange light poured through the windows. She stood in the living room, listening. No one else was inside. Then, from behind the wall, she heard something. It wasn't banging. It wasn't creaking. It was music. A single piano key struck again and again. Like someone testing a note. D. 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 She moved closer to the wall, placed her ear against it. The note changed. F. 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 Then stopped. She spun around, expecting someone to be behind her. No one. Just the whisper of wind brushing through the curtains. She backed away slowly and locked eyes with her own reflection in the window. But there was someone standing behind her in the glass. A tall shape. She turned around instantly. Gone. The next morning, Elise paid a visit to the only living person who might know more. Samuel Walker, Tom's father, a widower who lived in a cabin 2 towns over. They hadn't spoken much in years, but Elise tracked him down. He was sitting on the porch, smoking a pipe, staring at the trees. She introduced herself, sat down, and showed him the photos. He went quiet. His hand trembled slightly. Finally, he said, I hoped this wouldn't reach them. What do you mean? Samuel took a long drag of his pipe. When Tom was 10, he started drawing pictures. Strange ones. Figures with no faces. People hanging upside down from ceilings. A tall man watching the family sleep. We thought it was his imagination. But one day he said, he's not just in my drawings, Dad. He's in the hallway. He watches when you turn off the lights. Elise frowned. Are you saying Tom was haunted? Samuel's eyes didn't flinch. I'm saying we all were. My father before me. And maybe my father's father too. It skips some generations. But when it takes hold, it doesn't let go. You can't move. You can't run. All you can do is wait. Elise tried to keep her voice calm. Wait for what? Samuel leaned close. For the hollow man. Back at the house, Officer Brooks had been going through Emily's room. Between her mattress and box spring, she found a diary. Torn and worn. Many pages missing. She opened to a passage from 4 days before the family vanished. He stands in the hallway every night now. We hear him walking after midnight. Jake says he saw him in the kitchen, but Mom says it's just a dream. But I know dreams don't leave footprints on the carpet. Another page. Dad said not to talk about him. that saying his name feeds him. So I'm not writing it here, but I saw him in the mirror this morning. He was smiling. Last entry. Tonight's the night. I heard the music again. It's inside the walls. Mom said we'll have dinner early. She wants us all to be together. I'm scared. The rest of the diary was blank. That night, Elise couldn't sleep. She returned to the house one last time against protocol. She kept thinking about the music in the walls, the tall man in the pictures, the diary. She walked to Jake's room and checked his closet. There, behind a stack of board games, she found it. A child's painting, done in thick brush strokes. Almost panicked. It showed a dinner table. The family was sitting around it, holding hands. Behind them stood a tall black figure with no face. In the corner of the painting, Jake had scrawled for words. He came for dinner. Elise stepped back. Her hand flew to her mouth. Then she heard it again. The single piano note. Not from inside the house. From her phone. It had turned on by itself. The screen flashed one message. You saw too much. The morning the priest arrived, the town felt quieter than usual. The air had turned heavier. Still, even the dogs weren't barking. Father Jeremiah Burke hadn't been to Harvest Grove in over a decade. He left the ministry quietly after losing a girl during an exorcism in Phoenix, an event that broke his spirit and some said his soul. But he came back now because the Walker case made it to his desk in a brown envelope marked only, Hollow Man, Active. He knew the name. Everyone in the order availed it. They whispered it in closed-door meetings, tucked away in the Vatican's forgotten wings and hidden between burned pages in the Book of Saints. Not a demon. Not a ghost. A collector. One that only came when the family was ripe. Jeremiah stood outside the Walker house, cross in one hand, flask in the other. This one's gonna fight back, he muttered. He wasn't wrong. Inside, Detective Elise Harmon had been sleeping in the living room. She hadn't left since the previous night. Something had changed in her. She wasn't just investigating anymore, she was attached. And she was unraveling. At 2:46 a.m. she jolted awake to the sound of paper rustling. She reached for her flashlight and swept it across the room. There on the dining table was a new piece of paper. She walked toward it cautiously, heart thumping, stomach tight. It was Jake's handwriting. Same as in the diary. But shakier. Like it was written in a rush. He said, "You're next. He only takes families. But if you don't leave, he'll make you one of us. He's building something. A house made of people." Elise dropped the paper. Then she turned and saw the tall man again. In the reflection of the glass china cabinet. Right behind her. She turned nothing. But her flashlight flickered. And on the floor, by her feet, was a single piano key. Loose. Yellowed. Old. By sunrise, Father Jeremiah entered the home. He found Elise pale, hunched at the table, still holding the note. He took one look at her and said, "He's already touched you." She looked up dazed. "You know who it is?" He nodded. "Not by name. You don't name fire when it's in the house." He asked to see the photos on the wall. She led him to the hallway. He stared for a long time. "Every family that disappears leaves these behind," he whispered. "The man gets closer in every photo until he replaces the father." Elise blinked. "What?" Jeremiah pointed at one of the newer photos, the last one. At first glance, it was just Tom, smiling by the grill. But now the smile looked wrong. Wider. The eyes, too empty. "That's not Tom anymore," the priest said. "That's him. He takes the role. The life. And he waits. Until dinner is served. Then something no one expected happened. The family came back. At 4:03 p.m., a neighbor across the street, Margaret Penrose, saw lights flicker inside the Walker house. And 4 figures sitting at the dinner table again. She called the police, screaming, "They're back. They're just sitting there. My God, what's wrong with their faces?" When the officers arrived, Elise and Jeremiah were already outside, having just returned from the station. They kicked in the door, despite it still being locked from the inside. The table was full. Hot food again. And the Walkers were seated. Unmoving. Eyes open. Wide. Unblinking. Their mouths stretched into inhuman grins. Tom's head turned slowly toward them. But the voice that came out wasn't his. It was Jake's. "He says you brought someone new to the table." Father Jeremiah stepped forward, holding the crucifix high. "You are not welcome here." Tom's body twisted, bones cracking. He let out a long, wheezing laugh. And then the lights blew out. When they came back on, the family was gone again. So was the food. So was the crucifix. Jeremiah stood there trembling, hands empty. "He's not just taking them," he whispered. "He's feeding." Later that night, Elise went back to her motel room. She locked the door, closed the blinds, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at herself in the mirror. Then she noticed it. Her reflection blinked out of sync. She leaned in. So did the reflection. But it smiled. She didn't. That same long, inhuman grin. She gasped and backed away, knocking over the chair. The lights in the motel flickered. And for a split second, Elise saw the dining table behind her. The same one from the Walker house. She turned. Empty room. Then her phone buzzed. A new message. From an unknown number. "We saved you a seat." At the station the next morning, Jeremiah told the chief something that chilled the blood of every officer present. "The family didn't disappear," he said. "They were taken because they were meant to be taken. Every 40 years in this town, a family goes missing. Always a house built on old stone. Always a family of 4. Always around fall." He pulled out a burned journal from the trunk of his car. It listed names, dates, locations, going back to 1823. And every time he said, "Someone comes back." The chief asked, "So what do we do now?" Jeremiah answered, "We don't stop it. We just survive it. And make damn sure nobody sits at that table again." But they were too late. Because that night, a real estate agent listed the Walker home as move-in ready, full dining set included. It was never about the food. Not really. The hollow man didn't hunger like us. He fed on rolls on the act of sitting together and pretending everything was fine. That's why he waited for dinner. That's why the table had to be full. And that's why the Walkers were never supposed to come back. But now someone had let the cycle begin again. And it was Detective Elise Harmon who walked right into the trap. The listing went viral. A haunted house with warm food still on the table. Real estate influencers joked about it, using ghost filters and silly music. The comments were flooded with laughing emojis, dares, and "I totally live here" jokes. But one person actually showed up. Real estate agent Kyle Robbins, eager for clicks and a quick flip. He walked in with his phone live streaming. Commenters egged him on as he stepped over the welcome mat and announced, "Let's see what the devil's cooking tonight." Inside, the house had changed. It was cleaner. Walls repainted. Pictures replaced. There were no signs of the police. No yellow tape. No evidence that anything terrible had happened here. But the table? It was set. For plates. Still warm. No food, just the faint smell of meat and garlic. And a chair, one extra this time. Kyle laughed nervously and said to the stream, "So who's hungry?" The lights flickered. And the viewers saw what Kyle didn't, the faint outline of a tall, thin man standing behind the curtains. The stream cut to static. Kyle was never seen again. Father Jeremiah and Elise met one last time at the edge of the forest just beyond town. She hadn't slept. He hadn't prayed. "There's only one way to stop it," he said. "Burn the house," she replied. "No," he said. "Burn the table." Elise hesitated. "That's all?" "No," he admitted. "But it's the start. If you destroy the table, he loses his anchor. His stage. He can't play the family without the setting." She thought of Jake's note. He's building a house made of people. She wondered if that was literal or something worse. They went in at dusk. Just the two of them. Elise had gasoline. Jeremiah carried salt, holy water, and a small black blade passed down by exorcists long before either of them were born. The house welcomed them. Literally. On the wall, the phrase "Welcome Home" had appeared in dripping red. But they didn't stop. They made it to the dining room. And there it was. The table. Perfect. Untouched. 4 chairs. One still warm. Then the sound came. Low and groaning. Like a floorboard or a throat. The chairs turned slowly to face them on their own. Elise struck the first match. "Not this time," she whispered. She tossed it, and the fire roared. Not like wood burning, but like a scream, like it was alive, fighting. Jeremiah started chanting. That's when they heard the front door slam. He was inside. From the hallway came a smell of rot and dust. Then footsteps. Slow, heavy, measured. And there he stood. Tall, unnaturally thin, dressed like a 1950s father. Button shirt, slacks, a belt too tight. But his face was blank. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Just smooth, pale skin stretched too tight across a skull that was slightly off. And yet, you felt the expression. You knew he was smiling. "I saved you a seat," he said without speaking. Elise raised her lighter. Jeremiah held the blade. The hollow man twitched, and then lunged. The fight wasn't like in movies. There was no epic battle. There was screaming, smoke, Elise slashing at air, Jeremiah bleeding from his mouth as the hollow man pushed into his mind. His memories. "I see your family," the creature said through cracked sound. They were full of lies too. Jeremiah stabbed him, right through the chest, and the hollow man sucked in like a balloon deflating backwards. He shrieked once, high-pitched, like the sound of cutlery against bone, then vanished in a blast of black ash. The table burned completely. So did the chairs. But not before Elise saw 4 shadowy figures, 2 adults, 2 kids pulled down into the floor, screaming. It was the walkers, being let go, but not to heaven, just gone. A year later, Elise stood on a hill overlooking the lot where the Walker house once stood. It had been turned into a community park. Children played there now. Grass grew. The cycle was broken, but not ended, because the hollow man didn't die. He just lost his anchor, and anchors can be rebuilt. Elise never took another case. She lived quietly, alone. No family, no dinners, no tables. She couldn't risk it. Every once in a while, she received letters. No return address. Each one had the same note. "We miss you. Dinner's not the same without you." She never opened them again after the 5th one, because that one had a crumb inside. The scariest things don't just haunt houses. They haunt the roles we play, the meals we pretend to enjoy, and the lies we tell behind smiles. If you made it this far, you're one of us now. So pull up a chair, hit that like button, and subscribe. Because stories like this, they always come back around, and the table's never truly empty.